Now, let's get into today's show. Now, what I want to talk about today is this, right? Boom. Right there, what you see in front of you. All right. AOC, migrants are owed reparations. Now, I've been doing everything in my power, right, to expose how fake and phony AOC is to Black Americans since literally September 25th of 2019. That was the very first video that I made about her. And since then, I've made numerous videos time and time again, trying to beat that drum in hopes that it would pick up steam to get Black Americans to realize that she is not an ally. This woman on no level is on our side. And now I'm not going to go as far as to say that after this video, I'll never make another video about her again after this one. But in light of her recent comments, about how immigrants at the border deserve and should get reparations, I did feel it necessary to make what I call a complete comprehensive guide to understanding how AOC manipulates, twists, and use Black issues, pain, and suffering, as well as our struggle in order to push forth political agendas that benefit her people, while simultaneously being opposed to policies that would specifically and exclusively benefit the descendants of American slavery. Okay, so that's really the purpose of this video today. So now what I want to do is I want to get into the first video that I have to show you. And the first video that I have to show you is simply of her standing on her soapbox or on her high horse, speaking about how immigrants at the border are supposed to get reparations and how they should get it. So I'm going to play that video for you right now, and then we're going to come back to the discussion.
I don't want to draw false equivalence. What is happening here is not the same as what happened during the Trump administration, where they took babies out of the arms of their mothers and deported their families and permanently traumatized these children, some of whom we don't know will ever be reunified with their family again, which is a level of human rights violation that is just simply not the same. Both of these things are barbaric and they're wrong. But when you rip a baby out of the hands of a mother, you cannot draw the same comparison. And anyone who is trying to do that is doing a profound disservice to the cause of justice. So I don't want to excuse any of this, but I don't think we should also get them twisted together, because one is not the same. And we cannot dust that under the rug. And by the way, those families are owed reparations, period. Now I'll move on and continue on this issue.
You all heard what she said. Those families are owed reparations, period. Okay? There's nothing to talk about. There's nothing to discuss.
And by the way, those families are owed reparations, period. Now I'll move on and continue on this issue.
Now let's take a moment to review and look back at what AOC had to say when the topic of reparations was brought up to her, but as opposed to it going to immigrants at the border, it's going to the descendants of American slavery. Let's get into that video right now.
So the political conundrum is that if we live in a country that's still 70% white, which is a number that I think shocks a lot of people, but if you include white Hispanics, it actually is that big, who often vote similarly to non-Hispanic whites. What is a political cost, let's say, of saying we're going to throw your hat in with a program like reparations? How much do you think those considerations should be made?
Well, it's a good question. I think that one of the things that we've seen from early polling actually is that I think that we should distance ourselves and start getting away from this idea that we should only care about ourselves. Because when we really do start to assert and believe and understand and see how our destinies are tied, it doesn't we kind of get away from this idea that only, you know, people of color care about other people of color and only white people care about other white people and so on. There are a lot of systems that we have to dismantle, but also it does get into this interesting area of where we are as a country about identity, because like, what does it mean to be Black? Who is Black and who isn't, especially as our country becomes more biracial and multiracial. Same thing with being Latino. Same thing. It brings up all these questions of like passing and, you know, things like that. But I do think it is important that we have to have substantive conversations about race beyond like what is racist and what is not. And if someone says something racist, does that make them racist? Like, we need to get away from talking. Well, not that we have to get away from talking about racism. It's important that we talk about racism, but because we talk about racism so much, we actually aren't talking about race itself.
She just said a whole lot of nothing. That was an extremely long-winded way of saying, no, I do not support reparations for the descendants of American slavery. I find it very interesting that when it comes to her people, she's very much so for it. Those immigrants at the border that are stuck going through whatever it is that they're going through. But when it comes to you, when it comes to the descendants of American slavery, she literally just told you that she does not know what Black is anymore. She has no idea what you're talking about when you're talking about Black folks getting reparations. What's Black? When you really think about it, we're talking about race, but we're not really talking about race. So what does that really mean? Now, I'm sure if it was time to file a police report, she'd know exactly what Black is. You know, I bet you she would call you out by name. She would go, that person's a ADOS, FBA, Descendants of American Slavery, whatever you want to call them, Native Black American. I bet you she'd be able to point you out perfectly then. But when it's time to talk about reparations, she doesn't know what you are anymore, right? And this is something that she does very consistently. She's very consistent with this. She's very consistent with making sure that she does not support reparations as long as there is a way, or she will only support reparations as long as there's a way she can bring Latinos into the fold and bring her people into the fold to get reparations. If she can't do that, then she's not going to get behind it at all. And she's very consistent with this. And I can prove that to you because I have this article that I'm going to pull up right here. And the article is titled, and normally I don't say, you know, the big C word or the V word, you know, C19, you all know what I'm talking about. I always bleep that out. But for the sake of this video, just so there's no confusion, I'm going to go ahead and take a chance and just say it. The title of this article, and it comes from the New York Post. It's called AOC Wants Coronavirus Reparations for Minority Communities by Ebony Bowden from April 3rd, 2020 at 2:35 p.m. And I know that seemed like a lot of extra for me to say who was from, the date that the article was written, and the time that it was published. But whenever you're talking about the big C19, you can never be too careful, right? You got to make sure you say everything. So let me go ahead and pull this up for you so you can read it along with me. Because she literally only supports reparations as long as her people can tag along. Okay, now it should be right in front of you right now. Let me fix the screen. And the article reads as such. Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez has called for coronavirus reparations for minorities, claiming higher numbers of C19 fatalities in lower income communities stem from underlying inequality. COVID deaths are disproportionately spiking in Black and Brown communities, Ocasio-Cortez tweeted to her 6 million followers on Friday morning. Why? Because the chronic toll of redlining, environmental racism, the wealth gap, etc., are underlying health conditions, the Bronx-born lawmaker added. Inequality is a comorbidity. COVID relief should be drafted with a lens of reparations. Okay? With a lens of reparations. So once again, you're seeing that she literally only supports the conversation behind reparations as long as her people can benefit from it as well. But the moment you start talking about reparations that's specifically for you, She literally doesn't know what black is anymore. But what's even more crazy and just diabolical about AOC is that AOC will go as far as to even claim that she is black, if that means that they can get reparations, as well as any other tangibles coming from the descendants of American slavery, right? And I know for some of you that might sound crazy. What? AOC said she was black? Yeah, she did. She claimed to be black. That's what she's claiming now. But before we get into that video, because I got all the receipts, I keep all these videos on deck, I want to get into a video that she made, or an interview that she did sometime in 2019, where she was definitively not black. Okay, so let me play that for you right now.
That takes me to Elizabeth Warren. This has been, it feels as if she's always explaining a little bit more.
Yeah.
She's never lied about anything, but there's been she doesn't seem to have given us the fullest answer yet. And there's a lot of people offended by cultural appropriation. Where are you on this, and what do you think she should do that she hasn't?
Well, I think there's two ways to talk about it. So one is, and again, we can use and still have an opportunity. I think here in this situation, I think there's still an opportunity to model what the correct way of navigating these waters look like. And so, for example, I'm Latina. And Latino Americans have a really interesting identity because, especially for me as a Puerto Rican woman, my identity is the descendant of many different identities. I am the descendant of African slaves. I am a descendant of indigenous peoples. I'm a descendant of Spanish colonizers. I am a descendant of all sorts of folks. That doesn't mean I'm black. That doesn't mean I'm, native. But it does mean that I can use that as I can tell the story of my ancestors. That doesn't mean that I am that.
So like she just said, she's a descendant of slaves. That doesn't mean she's black. She's also a descendant of natives. That doesn't mean she's Native American, right? But what it does mean is that she can tell the stories of her ancestors, okay? She can tell the stories, as you can see, of her ancestors. Right? These are her ancestors that she can tell the stories of. There you go again. We got another photo of the stories that she can tell of her ancestors. Now, some of you might feel that are watching this, especially if you were recommended this, by a friend of yours and you're an AOC supporter, you might feel like, hey, bro, you're kind of reaching right now. I'm not reaching. Honestly, I'm not reaching at all, because what you have to understand is that within the very near future, Puerto Rico is going to be a state of the United States of America. And once it becomes a state of the United States of America, everything that she's saying holds 100% truth, right? And the waters get muddied even that much more, because now when she says I'm a descendant of slavery, well, I guess technically she would be a descendant of American slavery. If Puerto Rico is a state now within the United States, if it's an official state, that would technically make her a descendant of American slavery. That would technically make her ADOS. It would technically make her the foundational Black American. Technically speaking, she could claim that. And once again, now I know for some of you that identify with those terms might feel a little triggered right now, and you're like, oh man, that's not possible. That's not true. Brothers and sisters, I've played and read off to you articles, right, on videos in the past where I've proven to you that the terms that slavery and Jim Crow, just saying that alone, that does not even mean black anymore. That doesn't mean descendants of American slavery anymore. I've talked about this in other videos. Some of you may remember that. It doesn't mean that anymore. Slowly, all of this is being erased, and it's all being mixed up. Everybody's being mixed up in one big gumbo pot, at least as it pertains to being black, right? Or descendant of American slavery. At least as it pertains to that, it's all being swirled around in one big gumbo. Now, with all that being said, like I said, let me go ahead and play this next video. I was almost going to forget, because some of you think, if you haven't seen this video already, you think I'm lying. AOC is black now, okay?
And now that you talk about race, what do you think the Latinx community should do to stop racism among them and among other races?
Yeah, well, the first thing that's so important is for us to talk about racism within our community and how we fit both, how we are both impacted by racism in the United States and across the world, but also how it exists within our own communities. And, you know, a lot of times I'll hear people say, okay, this is about Black Lives Matter. What about Latinos? And I always say, Latinos are Black. we are Afro-Latina, and we run an entire racial spectrum. And so we have to have conversations around colorism, and we have to have conversations about the African and indigenous roots from which we come and how that's reflected in systems of power, wealth inequality, and frankly, our political system.
I told you she Black. I told you. AOC's Black. Okay? She's Black. And you know, to wrap this thing up, you know, I got a couple more videos for you, but we're not going to be here for too much longer, right? Because when she's talking about I can speak for my ancestors, right? And I'm telling you that once Puerto Rico becomes a state, which will be in the near future, you know, I believe within the next decade, by 2030, Puerto Rico will be a state of the a state within the United States of America. It will be officially a state, 51st state, you can say, right? When that happens, it sounds crazy, but technically by default, she's going to be able to claim descendant of American slavery. She'll be able to claim that. And when she's talking about how I can tell this stories of my ancestors, she means that very literally. She means that very literally. And I'm also going to show that to you right now as well. I'm going to play a clip to prove what I'm saying is true. Okay. So now let's go ahead and wrap up this video. Because like I said, AOC, man, you know, she was very serious when she was talking about her ancestry. Here's this video right here, right? It comes from Hot 97, the interview that she did. The title of this video is called Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez on History of Juneteenth, Racism in America, and Upcoming Elections, okay? She about to sit here and talk to you guys about the history of Juneteenth. You guys thought that I was trolling and that I was playing games when I'm saying this stuff about her, but I'm not. I'm not joking around. I'm not playing games concerning her at all. All right. And I want you to see what she said when she was talking about Juneteenth. And I can tell you a bit of it ahead of time right now. What she did is what everybody does. You're sitting up here and you're having a conversation about, you know, Black people and Black issues. And what does she do? She does the same thing that other communities do. They make sure that as they're talking about Black subjects and Black issues, they tie up their struggle around that Black issue in order to propel their struggle to the top of yours. And this is what she did when she was giving a history lesson on Juneteenth.
They run away when it comes to issues of race and immigration. And by the way, immigration is a Black issue too. It's not just a light-skinned Latino issue.
You see what I'm saying? You can never just have a conversation about you and about yourself. Some way, somehow, they're going to put their struggle and wrap it around yours to propel their issues to the top. I'll play that one more time.
They run away when it comes to issues of race and immigration. And by the way, immigration is a Black issue too. It's not just a light-skinned Latino issue.
I mean, I don't know what else to tell you about this woman.
Thanks, AOC. Thank you very much.
Have a good one.
Thank you so much.
Happy Juneteenth.
Happy Juneteenth.
Happy Juneteenth. I'm Black. Oh man. You know, I want to see somebody just in the super chat. Thank you, brother. I'm really bad at pronouncing names. I'm so sorry. I believe this brother's name is Peril Q. I'm sorry. I suck at this, at saying those names, but I appreciate the super chat, brother. But yeah, man, to go ahead and wrap this thing up, at this stage in the game, especially if you were recommended this video by a friend of yours, you know, because you're a Black AOC supporter, you consider yourself a progressive Democrat or progressive, you know, I'm not trying to sway you too hard off of your political beliefs, man, because I don't necessarily disagree with progressivism, you can say, right? I'm more shoot down the middle, but there are things on the progressive side of the ball that I can get with. There are things on the conservative side of the ball that I can get with. But what I can't get with is people who consistently make it a point to manipulate Black folks into voting for them, right? And they manipulate them by disrespecting their struggle, disrespecting their pain, disrespecting their history, attempting to hijack their history, referring to themselves as Black when they're not Black because they think that they'll be able to get something tangible out of it for themselves as well as their people. I also can't respect any group of people that are running around here taking their struggles and wrapping it around the descendants of American slavery and their history and their struggle. I can't respect that because it never happens the other way around. Never. Just like what I talked about with the Lil Nas X video that I had. It never happens the other way around. You know, I'm going to go out and say this, and I mean this seriously. Black folks are so honorable with how they conduct themselves politically, despite the fact on many levels we're very foolish because we consistently vote Democrat just to be voting Democrat, despite the fact that we get nothing in return. But at the same time, you know, we're so honorable with how we go about doing what we do that we never make it a point to use other people's struggle as a catalyst to do what we need to do for ourselves to get whatever political legislation that we need to get across the finish line. That never comes from our side. It always comes from everybody else regularly. And I simply can't respect that. So like I said, at this stage in the game, for those of you brothers and sisters that actually support AOC and you get behind her, you know, hopefully, man, you watch this and just reconsider a few things concerning her and see her for the snake that she is. Because I don't understand how anybody can support her if you're Black at this point. I don't understand how you can do that with good faith and with good conscience. Okay, because she's a snake. She doesn't respect you. She doesn't respect our people. She doesn't respect the descendants of American slavery. She doesn't respect Black people as a whole. She uses you as a useful tool to get her agenda across the finish line, to propel her up politically, and to put her people higher up on the economic totem pole. Okay? At the end of the day, it's all about economics, man. It's all about economics.